Hello, friends, and welcome back to Liberated Living. Today we are talking about decoding conflict within relationships utilizing the relationship empowerment model, as well as the key to a good relationship. Now, we may ask ourselves what the key is to a good relationship and have many wonderful answers. However, today we're going to explore a little bit more of the depth and psychology behind relationships because we know we're all the common denominator within all of our relationships. And one of the many keys to a good relationship is the relationship we have with ourselves. So hopefully today we can take a look at that in maybe ways that you haven't perhaps perceived before, asking different questions and thereby maybe getting different answers and hopefully gaining some new insight today. And I really want to start, first of all, with psychological need that we feel to expect a partner to maybe complete us or meet our needs. Even though conceptually we may disagree with that, it is wired within us and once again encoded. So because we all inherently possess both masculine and feminine energies and attributes, finding balance within these two polarities within will create harmony, and both aspects of our masculine, our assertive and dominant traits, and our feminine, i.e. our intuitive and caring natures, are theorized in Chinese medicine as our yin, which is the feminine, and yang, the masculine. And by marrying these two within, we achieve our wholeness. So what shifts that paradigm, though, is the understanding that those polarities can be completely separate from our construct of gender, and that we all contain a myriad, often dynamic combinations of both. And it's within the marrying of these two within that we actually discover our own wholeness and no longer feel the need for a partner, but therefore we can be enhanced with a partner and overcome more of this codependency biological encoding. So we can overcome our biology, right, through psychology. And although we're all consciously aware of this, the erroneous conditioned mindset of needing a partner to complete us unfortunately takes all the power out of our hands and assigns that responsibility for our happiness over to someone or something externally, causing us to become victims within our relationships as well as perpetual victims of circumstance to meet our needs and fill our perceived voids through others. Therefore, we will depend endlessly on others to supply these needs for us, and relationships are susceptible to challenges right from the start. Unfortunately, this programming can set us up to fail straight out of the gate, and our partner isn't meant to complete us, but as we know, relationships can be the most efficient growth and learning opportunities and best schooling that we do have. And although we know we can learn and gain so much in relationships, with this inherent conditioned programming, within not only conventional thinking, but also housed within the subconscious mind, this conditioned programming keeps us entangled in ongoing codependency cycles and being at the mercy of others seeking happiness outside of us when we all know it is an inside job. And believing that we are powerless or incomplete suggests that we're defective, which only keeps us trapped in needing to be rescued. And this relegates us to a lifetime of crippling dependency on a partner within primary relationships, hoping someone will save us from the misconception of any lack. But isn't it really a lack in our belief paradigms? So if we want to get beyond relationship conflicts and identify root solutions that reach above temporary short-term fixes while experiencing lasting conscious relationships, we need to go deeper and once and for all reprogram the subconscious beliefs. We can look to our patterns and inherent psychological programming to identify how codependency patterns were formed in the first place. And we discussed this in our last podcast, which is part 1, in looking to our love languages based on our perceived voids. So this may, if you caught some of that, we're going to touch a little bit more on those subjects, but we're going to expand quite a bit more. First of all, codependency is not only to substances or relationships, but more on that subject later. And secondly, we're not discussing interdependence here. Interdependence is two or more people mutually working together in a cooperative fashion where either of the parties may be interchangeable versus codependent or have an attached connection to one another, which many of us may be aware of, and that's what this part of the intent and purposes of this podcast. Although our intention is innocent and we're all well-meaning, the reality is we each know that we can't be responsible for everyone's happiness, only our own, right? And this tendency is innate in each of us. The most natural desire inherent in each of us is to both love and be loved. Although as deserving as we may feel of this natural desire, love goes beyond that. And we can't actually feel loved if we don't first love ourselves. And to the extent in which we love ourselves will be to the extent in which we actually feel loved by others or even allow more love in. So looking outside ourselves to feel our needs or validate our worth induces our codependent behaviors and reduces our personal empowerment, causing us to operate as victims or an enabling rescuer in our relationships. And we're going to cover these particular archetypes in this particular video. And this negatively impacts our sense of self-worth, causing us to feel powerless, metaphorically giving our power to someone or something external rather than addressing the real void. And who knows what the real void is? Who said we weren't loved enough? And what actually constitutes being enough, or even what love is for us on a personal level? Is it a feeling? We all define it differently. So perhaps there's a common thread and another angle to explore in relation to these particular perceived voids. So what is the source of these perceived voids, and are we lending it the true attention it deserves? Again, we touched on this before, but for this reason, especially for those that were raised by the parents, inherited dispositions can be the most difficult emotional patterns to overcome, because the perceived voids evolve as a result of a child seeking specific needs or love and comfort and affection of their parent during maybe challenging times or discomforting times, and perceiving those needs as not being met and potentially feeling unloved, whether the parent did their best. Not feeling good enough is a belief in which many of these fears are formed and centered, and from experiences of not feeling loved, regardless, again, of how much the parents did adequately meet the child's needs, as these are just perceptions and not therefore perceived voids. And in those particular instances, so most commonly these unfulfilled needs are unwittingly transferred to our partner or spouse. And it doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive to a romantic partner. It can also be primary relationships, because we will see these patterns in other relationships as well. And this places the expectation on other partners, other individuals, to meet the needs of our own need for worth or validation. And this often translates to our common love language, as we discussed in the last video, of how one either felt loved or possibly ways in which they didn't feel loved as a result of these unmet needs, which will become evident patterns in significant relationships. So for instance, if a child believes she or he lacked quality time from the parent they're seeking love and validation from, then it's possible, or even more probable, that feeling this void is still evident within partnerships today, or will be, and hoping a partner will meet this need through quality time, there is an emptiness left unfulfilled. So consequently, leaving us to believe the power, again, is outside of our hands, because these are just unconscious programs. And we're operating within relationships from these patterns. We don't realize these are just the subconscious beliefs imprinted from our youth. And this method causes us to operate, unfortunately, also from fear within relationships. It works to our disadvantage because it subjects us to depend on others and allowing fear instead of love to win every time. So these perceived voids persist throughout our life, seeking to compensate for the feeling of lack from the perception of receiving inadequate love or attention, and inadvertently finding ways to fill the void indefinitely. And this is often done through codependency or other addictions, and often escalating the imbalance, particularly within partnership dynamics and primary relationships that create cycles of power struggle and unhealthy entanglements until we are able to break the pattern. So we're going to cover a lot more of this within the Karpman drama triangle, because this tug of war exists within the confines of what psychotherapist Stephan Karpman refers to as the drama triangle, which is also referred to as the conflict triangle, with the dominating persecutor, enabling rescuer, and fearful victim archetypes as a social model that forms our codependency patterns and power dynamics which exist within relationships, and particularly within family branches passed on to its members until these patterns are healed. So you can possibly see how deep the ramifications of unmet needs and perceived voids can become, and perhaps will even monopolize our lives until we choose to heal them. And we all deserve to overcome challenges and experience peace and love within relationships, but we must also embody self-love first and foremost, and we will cover that in another video. However, let's go ahead and explore these archetypes, and you can maybe bear in mind which archetype applies most to you. The triangle maps a type of dysfunctional and destructive interaction that can occur between people in conflict. The drama triangle model is a tool used in psychotherapy, specifically transactional analysis. The codependence and power struggles is a natural part of our emotional development until we evolve through independent accountability and competency, maybe like a child moving away to college for the first time, for instance. And during conflict, we will switch roles between each of these archetypes. The first being the victim, that is the archetype within each and every one of these roles. They are derived from power struggles when we do not feel empowered, which makes sense, right? That the victim stance is poor me, the victim feels victimized, perhaps oppressed, helpless, hopeless, maybe even powerless, and maybe seek out a persecutor or a rescuer who will save the day, but also perpetuates the victim's negative feelings. The rescuer, we all know, common to all of us that we all generally identify with, is wanting to jump in to rescue, let me help you, a classic enabler. The rescuer may feel guilty if he or she does not come to the rescue, sometimes operating from obligatory rewards, as the rewards can be derived from the rescue role that the focus is taken off the rescuer when he or she focuses their energy on someone else. It enables them to ignore their own needs and issues. So it could be an avoidance to their own problems. And the persecutor, or aka the villain, insists that it's all your fault. The persecutor is perhaps identified as controlling, blaming, critical, authoritative, maybe rigid and superior. So pay notice when either of these archetypes or even your persecutor wants to rear its face, and what will activate these triggered responses. Is it when the rescuer archetype feels undervalued and wants to feel appreciation for all that they've done, perhaps for the victim? And again, the victim cannot even operate from appreciation because they're in a power struggle, and appreciation is a form of power. So there's many ways that we actually go into this with a little bit more depth. However, each and every one of these archetypes are benefiting with an emotional reward of some sort. And we're interchangeable as we may oscillate between each of these roles. So each of the archetypes' payoff is derived from perhaps the emotional reward. So the antithesis is to deprive the archetype of the emotional reward. Maybe like the analogy of applying your own air mask first, right? That we can't help others survive unless we first survive. Save ourselves first, then we can help, lend a hand. So to break the drama cycle, we have to, 1, stop participating in the game or even leave the game. And the solution is when we can learn to believe in ourselves and hold a higher vision of possibilities for others' growth potential as well, we all win. There's truly no better way to empower a relationship than to believe in one another and to demonstrate mutual support, compassion, and understanding. So we elaborate a lot on breaking these cycles and how to experience conscious and thriving relationships, enhance greater self-love, how to have greater self-care, and even deeper alignment work and so forth in our courses. And we will cover the lesson and opportunity in partnership, the relationship empowerment model, and high leverage mirror technique into our blind spots in our next video. So stay tuned for that. And if you are ready for further guidance in perhaps your primary relationships, we have online courses guiding you through adversities to your own intuitive answers with therapeutic exercises, meditation, universal wisdom, mindfulness, psychotherapy, holistic psychology, solution-focused principles, and much more. So click the link to learn more. Thanks for joining me, and be sure to like, subscribe, and share with others if you gained from this video today. So stay tuned for more each week, and bye for now.